News Channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Well, this is GB News. Up next, it's The Late Show Live with the one and only Bev Turner from Washington, D.C. And we really are going right to the heart of the action of one of the biggest stories dominating the British press at the moment. The front of the Daily Telegraph, their huge expose. BBC's President Trump bias exposed in a memo leak. Pretty shameless, pretty on-the-nose stuff, confirming what a lot of us thought we already knew when it comes to BBC bias. But it's nice to actually see it unfold before your eyes, Bev, isn't it? What's the reaction from the White House over there? What are the consequences for anti-Beeb?
Well, Donald Trump Jr. has already tweeted about it, casting aspersions, frankly, Patrick, saying the UK media is just as bad as America. It is not. It's one of the reasons that we are here, why GB News is now based out here in Washington, D.C., because when you are here, you realise what a one-sided take on Donald Trump and the administration people get in the UK, given that predominantly the news outlet that maybe most people would tune into, regardless of what age you are, you might hear a little bit of the BBC every day. It is incredibly rare to hear anything about Donald Trump on the BBC, which is not insulting, which is positive, frankly. You almost never get impartial, you just get negative. So when you're out here in America, you realise that people don't feel like that about him. The people who voted for him certainly don't feel like that. Some of my panellists this evening and guests in the studio don't feel like that. So let's correct the wrongs of the BBC tonight, shall we? I'm going to be talking to the journalist who broke this story in the Daily Telegraph. It's a front page, as you've just shown, tomorrow. So we're going to be talking to him. And I think there's more to come on the BBC and what they get wrong.
Well, yes, I mean, almost definitely. I mean, this is part of a 19-page dossier, and apparently BBC executives, and it goes right to the top, appear to have ignored it. But as I understand it as well, Bob, you're kind of dealing with another story that I know is a compare and contrast, and I love it when we do this stuff, you know, comparing us here to America, about how the police deal with potential threats there, as opposed to how we appeal to deal with them here in Britain. And I think the British approach appears to be to let them wander around aimlessly until they allegedly commit a crime, whereas in America they might do something more different.
Absolutely. Well, the stabbing story, of course, is starting to make the headlines here in the US as well, and one of my panellists has been on multiple American news outlets today, so he's going to tell us how the American media is handling that story, what lessons they think need to be learnt, because they look over at Europe here in America and they see a lot of the stuff that's going wrong, particularly with mass migration. And it's not just the UK. Often Americans will talk about Europe and they kind of lump us all in together, the UK with France and Spain and Germany. And a lot of the footage of people who are trying to live a different life in European countries, you can't tell which country it is. You just have very similar themes of chaos and crime and poverty and a kind of third world outlook. So, yeah, we're going to be talking about that as well, Patrick, tonight. So we have a lot to get through. I bid you farewell.
Take care, Bev.
This is The Late Show Live. On The Late Show Live tonight.
You are fake news.
Sir,
go ahead.
Can you state categorically that nobody... No, Mr. President.
The BBC is officially fake news. It's taken on the wrong president. Exhibit A.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight.
Right now, the White House is considering its options, we are told. And tonight we're going to be joined by someone with inside knowledge of the situation, the man who broke the story. Also tonight. We'll go live to Brazil, where Prince William is, fresh from that Prince Andrew scandal. Our royal correspondent Cameron Walker is there. Cameron.
Well, Bev, Prince William appears determined to move on from the Prince Andrew scandal, but just on Copacabana Beach behind me, just a couple of hours ago, he did something so un-Prince-like, you're not going to believe it, so stay tuned to find out.
We want to cut taxes, of course we do. But we understand substantial tax cuts, given the dire state of debt and our finances, are not realistic at this current moment in time.
Will a reform government reduce your taxes as previously promised? Well, it's not looking good. But a Nigel Farage aide joins me tonight to put up a staunch defence. We're going to be diving headfirst into the stories from tomorrow's newspapers, of course, hours before they hit the shelves. We are live in Washington, D.C., just yards from the White House, bringing you the stories that America is talking about and that matter to Britain too, including this. Good vibes in the Trump administration. That's their official White House social media feed. Also good vibes here, so stay with me. I'm Bev Turner. This is The Late Show Live. Well, it's the biggest story in town. It turns out American President Donald Trump was onto something.
Where are you from?
BBC.
Okay. Here's another beauty.
It's a good line. Impartial, free and fair.
Yeah, sure.
Well, that criticism of the BBC and John Sopel, who was talking to there, apparently was well-founded, because the so-called impartial and accurate public service broadcaster is nothing but.
You are fake news.
Sir,
go ahead.
Can you state categorically that nobody... No, Mr. President...
Because tonight the BBC is facing serious questions over its credibility after the Daily Telegraph exposed a panorama segment that heavily doctored a speech by the American president in 2021, hours before the infamous January the 6th Capitol riot. As you're about to hear, the corporation spliced together two quotes 1 hour apart to make it seem like he encouraged an insurrection.
They played the following clip.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you. And we fight. We fight like hell.
But Trump didn't, in fact, say this at all. The BBC spliced together two clips that took place 54 minutes apart. So let's go through it again.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you.
Now, see there, between Capitol and, that's a cut. Here's what Trump actually said.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
It's different. It wasn't until nearly an hour later that he then said the second part of the BBC's version.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we fight. We fight like hell.
That is damning stuff. Now, this, of course, is coming from the holier-than-thou BBC that even has its own so-called fact-checking service named BBC Verify that they claim counters disinformation. Oh, the irony. Just take a listen at this embarrassing trailer telling you, licence fee payers, that they are right when everyone else is wrong.
Disinformation. You think you're winning.
There's no climate change.
The more you try to drown out reality, the harder we'll work to verify the facts. We'll be watching. We'll be ready. Because it's the pursuit of truth that gives us our calling. The fight for truth is on.
But this is nothing new to people who've been paying attention. BBC News and Current Affairs is run by champagne socialists and public school kids trying to fit in. Just look at their bias against Brexit. And now they use every opportunity to blame it for our problems. Man-made climate change, not open for discussion. Nigel Farage, they sneer at him and his voters. Well, I think they've taken on more than they can handle because, do you remember this?
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen.
It seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
So Donald Trump sued American network CBS over the doctoring of that Kamala Harris interview during the presidential race, and he won $16 million. Plus, he won $15 million from ABC after one of its presenters said he was liable for rape. So the BBC could be in a spot of bother. Let me know what you think. gbnews.com/your say. And to remind you, the BBC licence fee is set to increase to more than £180, up from its current fee of £174.50. But this is a little reminder of why GB News exists, of course. We are the home of free speech, the People's Channel. We are certainly not fake news. We take our job very seriously, and truth matters. Now, should the president be suing Donald Trump? Let's talk to the associate editor at The Telegraph, Gordon Rayner, who broke this story. Gordon, thank you so much for joining us. We're looking at the front page of the paper there tomorrow. Now, what do you know about what the White House are going to do about this?
Well, Bev, you'll have seen that Donald Trump Jr., the president's son, has tweeted about this. He's said it's fake news, rather predictably. We know that the White House have seen our story, that they are looking at it, and that they're considering their options. Beyond that, I can't tell you more.
Did you talk to the White House before this story ran to let them know this was going to be on the front page of the paper?
No, we contacted them as soon as we put the story online, which was at about 3:30 this afternoon, our time. And as soon as we had put the story up, we put a call into them. They sounded very interested, and they started looking at it then.
And tell me about your reaction when you saw this leaked report. Just tell our viewers who may not be familiar with this story today how you accessed this information and who was it? I mean, I'm not asking for names. I don't want you to betray your sources. But it was somebody within the BBC who felt they had an obligation as a whistleblower to let a newspaper know.
Not quite. So the report that this story came from was written internally for BBC Eyes Only. It was written by a chap called Michael Prescott, who was an independent advisor to the BBC's editorial guidelines and standards committee. So they're the sort of arbiters of impartiality. He had served on that committee for 3 years. He was very unhappy with what he'd seen. He was very unhappy with the bias that he said he'd seen, and with the BBC manager's refusal to do anything about it. So he wrote that report. It was sent to the BBC board. It found its way to the government. It found its way to me. And within that report was this extraordinary piece of information about that Panorama documentary that we're now talking about, something which nobody had really spotted at the time. The chap who wrote this report, Michael Prescott, he had seen the programme and he was very suspicious of it. He thought it didn't seem right. It seemed very biased to him. So he asked for a review of the programme, which then threw up this fact that they had spliced the Trump speech into, they'd taken two parts, put them together, made it seem like he was speaking one fluent sentence, telling people to go to the Capitol and fight. He didn't say that at all. You've actually done President Trump a huge favour here, because he feels very strongly about the way that he's depicted in the media, and actually you've handed him a smoking gun.
knowing what he's like and knowing how seriously he takes his public image and how frustrated he is by the fake news of the media, what would you expect him to do now?
Well, you know him probably better than I do, Bev, but I would imagine that he may well decide to say something on social media. That's what he tends to do first of all. You know, as you say, he is a litigious man. I don't know what his plans are, but I would probably be slightly concerned if I was the BBC that he may be looking at what his options are from a legal standpoint. The BBC, oddly, even when we pointed this out to them and raised it with them, they don't seem to be able to grasp that there's anything wrong here. When it was raised internally, originally, the BBC managers said, well, we edit clips all the time, it's not a problem. The bigger problem for the sort of senior BBC managers is that the chap who wrote this internal memo had raised all this with the most senior people at the BBC, Tim Davie, the Director General, Samir Shah, the Chairman. So they knew that this had gone on, and they did nothing about it either. And in fact, he was so frustrated that he wrote specifically to the Chairman, said, what are you going to do about this? And he didn't even get a reply.
Okay, fascinating. Gordon, thank you so much. Gordon Rayner there, Associate Editor at The Telegraph, who broke that story. Let me bring in my panel now this evening. Political analyst Eric Ham is with us and political consultant Thomas Corbett-Dillon. Thomas, let me start with you as our Brit living in America. Just your reaction, first of all. I mean, we all know that the BBC gives a distorted view. It's always quite sneery about Donald Trump. Yep. Even if they fall short of actually overtly criticising him, they will never be complimentary about him. So this doesn't come as a huge surprise. But actually, to see that level of manipulation in an edit on a programme as journalistically credible as Panorama, I still think is shocking.
Yes, I mean, it's surprising the amount of reviews that would have gone through before it went on air, that no one, you know, you could be excused for saying a junior editor thought this would make it better, let's do that. But someone should have picked that up before it went out. But I think the BBC are in big trouble. Look, I would put money that the president is going to sue them. You know, he is currently he's suing the Wall Street Journal, which is owned by Rupert Murdoch, which of course owns Fox News, which is, you know, his favorite channel. He is willing to sue his favorite channel, or the Wall Street Journal, which is owned by Rupert, for $10 billion right now because they put out the birthday card that he wrote to Epstein. He is going to sue the BBC. The only thing that I wonder is it's in England, so it makes things a little bit more complicated. It's easier to sue here, but I'm pretty sure he's very happy. He's suing, you know, Rupert, which is a good friend. He's going to sue the BBC if he can.
Do you think he will, Eric? And if he does, what will motivate him?
I think he will, and I think the reason he will is because we've already seen massive American media companies capitulate to Donald Trump. As you mentioned, CBS and ABC, and now he's suing the Wall Street Journal, which I don't think he's going to win that lawsuit. In fact, I think they're doubling down, particularly on the Epstein situation. But again, I think this is all much ado about nothing. We saw Donald Trump was actually impeached as a result of January 6th. We saw that charges were brought as a result of January 6th, and we saw over 100 people actually found guilty for their participation in January 6th. So what the BBC did or was alleged to have done with the splicing of Donald Trump's comments, it does not in any way, I think, exonerate Donald Trump for actually leading an insurrection against the U.S. government.
But to what extent was that impeachment based on politicians watching clips over and over again? Most likely that clip, because the whole point is you didn't have to watch Panorama to see that. That will have been tweeted and posted and reposted, and it builds a noise and it builds a narrative that maybe was just never there.
I think we need to remember that those lawmakers were actually under siege and their lives were in danger. And we know that police officers were killed. We know that there were additional people who were killed as a result of this. And of course, we know that the vice president himself believed that his life was actually in jeopardy as a direct result of some of the things that Donald Trump was tweeting at the time that it was actually happening. So I don't think what the BBC did has anything to do with what took place on January 6th. That, I think, is directly a response and directly because of Donald Trump's actions.
OK, all right. I'm sure our viewers at home will let me know what you think. Won't you? gbnews.com/your say. The BBC have given us a statement and they've said, while we don't comment on leaked documents, when the BBC receives feedback, it takes it seriously and considers it carefully. Michael Prescott is a former advisor to a board committee where differing views and opinions of our coverage are routinely discussed and debated. Right, still to come this evening on The Late Show Live. We'll bring you the latest as police investigate this train stabbing that shocked the nation. How safe do you feel in Britain? This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We want to cut taxes, of course we do. But we understand substantial tax cuts, given the dire state of debt and our finances, are not realistic at this current moment in time.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live with me, Bev Turner. That was Reform UK leader Nigel Farage earlier today, outlining the party's economic ambition. We're going to be discussing that in a little while. But first of all, police are investigating if a man accused of a mass stabbing attack on a train in Cambridgeshire is linked to 3 other knife incidents over the weekend. 32-year-old Anthony Williams has appeared in court charged with 11 counts of attempted murder over Saturday's stabbings and a separate attack hours earlier in East London. The stabbing of a teenage teenage boy on Friday, and 2 sightings of a man with a knife at a barber's in Peterborough are now part of the inquiry. So how safe is Britain? Let's talk to former Met Police officer Chris Hobbs. Good evening, Chris. Thank you very much. Good morning there in the UK. We can't speculate about this particular case. Of course, a man is in custody. But what questions does it raise on a broader issue, Chris, in terms of how safe people are, especially for those who might have been involved in previous crimes?
Yeah, it depends which set of statistics you look at, to be quite honest. I mean, some of the statistics for crime on the trains are quite horrendous. But then people will compare that with the millions of people that use the trains every day. So it's a difficult one, but we're not in a good place at the moment. There's no two ways about that. There's huge pressure on the police service. I thought you might be asking me about why the calls where this gentleman may have been, individual may have been, weren't attended and weren't properly dealt with. But then you look at the sheer volume of criminality that the police are having to deal with and the bureaucracy that goes with it. And you can imagine on a Friday night, say they get a call to someone's been seen with a knife, he's wandered off somewhere. In an ideal world, you would send umpteen units to that call and see where that person was and possibly grab him. But of course, the poor dispatcher is looking at her screen or his screen and seeing those red eyeballs piling up with no one to deal with them. So at the moment, we've got a police service that is struggling to deal with the volume of work expected of it. We've got 100,000 police officers fewer than they've got in France. I know France is a bit bigger geographical area. Similar figures in Spain. We've got one of the lowest police population ratios in Europe, and they are getting swamped. And then something like this happens, which is totally catastrophic, and it makes people feel unsafe. And in a way they should, because the police service is under pressure and not really doing the job that most of the officers would want to do, and that is protect the public in a much better way than they are at the moment, but they're struggling.
Yeah. Let me bring in my panel here, Chris, as well. Thomas Corbett-Dillon and Eric Ham are with me. And it's interesting, Eric, to hear your perception as an American who lives here about crime, because this sort of event that we experienced at the weekend is extremely shocking, but it does feel, and statistically that is backed up, that knife crime is on the increase. But somebody who lives in a country with guns, do you maybe look at us and think, well, in some ways we are lucky?
Well, not that we're lucky, but I think what you all are experiencing there, this is a common occurrence on the trains, on the buses here in the United States. This is something that we see play out every single day, and it's something that I think is becoming increasingly worrisome. We know there has become a political fight over how Donald Trump is using the National Guard, how he is using federal forces. But this is one of the reasons why, at least he is claiming that he's doing this, is because of crimes just like this that played out today or over the weekend in the UK. We see crimes like this every single day in the United States.
Thomas, if you ring the police here, do you expect them to attend?
Yeah, they do, and they tend to come sort of overwhelmingly in massive numbers. There's a large police force, particularly in DC, and you know, the US has a lot of police officers, and they're paid very well, actually. But I think, as Chris mentioned, the police are spread so thin in England. So why is it that the British public are banned from protecting themselves? Why is it that ladies can't have a little pepper spray in their handbag to protect themselves? That is, you know, common in this country. It's not pepper spray, they've got little guns in their handbags, you know. And before I moved to the US, I was so anti-gun. I was like, America's crazy with the guns and things. But living here, I've started to realize, actually, it is quite good, because, you know, the police, even if they're 2 minutes away, that's 2 minutes. And I saw the tweet of the guy who was on the train, and it was just heartbreaking when he's saying, you know, I was defenseless. I'm looking around the train, there's a table, there's a sandwich. What can I defend myself with? I think we need to have a discussion in the UK about allowing people to protect themselves.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Chris, as a former Met copper. Would you like the public walking around all tooled up with whatever it is in their back pocket?
No, I don't. I really don't. I wouldn't like to see that, because what you would also get are the gangs Also, if you can carry a pepper spray as a little old lady on the street, you can carry a pepper spray as a gang member. So I'm not entirely convinced that will be the way to go, to be quite honest. Where do you draw the line as well? Pepper spray. What I would say, and what is really frustrating for police officers, is that police officers, when they are off duty going to and from work, are not allowed to carry even a baton or their spray. When they're off duty, they cannot carry it. And often those officers, and it happened to me, luckily I had a baton with me on that day, but they're expected to sort out issues when they're travelling to and from work or when they're off duty, and they haven't got anything to do it with, not even a baton. And we actually made representations to the Met when I was in the job, when one of my officers on a train going home met up with a guy who was deranged, was trying to deal with it. Luckily, uniform officers got there, they searched him and pulled out a huge bladed knife. We made representations to the Met. Surely officers should be able to carry, even if it's an expandable baton, to and from when they're going to and from work. The Met turned around and basically told us to get lost, which I thought was quite appalling.
Tasers are becoming more common now, Chris, of course. How grateful are the police to have access to taser guns?
Well, I was at a police the way forward sort of meeting the other day, and they're just being issued with a much better taser than the one that they currently carry, because the one they currently carry is a bit unreliable, doesn't always fire as it should do, things get jammed, doesn't fire a huge distance. The one that is replacing this one is much better, can fire a much longer distance, going to be much more accurate and less prone to going wrong at a crucial moment. So very, very useful. The police officers who are at the sharp end do appreciate being in possession of tasers. That's a big step forward, without a doubt.
Yeah, OK. Thank you, Chris. So good to see you. Thank you for staying up late to talk to me. That was former Met Police Officer Chris Hobbs there. Let me know your thoughts. I'm going to look at them now as we take a quick break, but still to come on The Late Show Live.
There will be a general election caused by economic collapse that will happen in 2027.
That was Reform UK leader Nigel Farage earlier today, saying that tax cut plans that he had are no longer realistic due to the state of the economy under Labour, but has insisted that reform would immediately remove inheritance tax from family farms. Why has he said this now? This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I ever got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We want to cut taxes, of course we do. But we understand substantial tax cuts, given the dire state of debt and our finances, are not realistic at this current moment in time.
Welcome back to the Late Show Live. That was Reform UK leader Nigel Farage announcing that he is abandoning his pledge to cut tens of billions of pounds in tax, saying they are no longer realistic. Now, previously, the Reform leader had pledged £90 billion in tax cuts, including the scrapping of inheritance tax for properties worth more than £2 million.
The state of the finances, the state of the economy is far, far worse than it was in the run-up to a 2024 general election. But be in no doubt, we are pro-business. Be in no doubt, we want work to be rewarded. We would immediately remove IHT from family farms and from family-run businesses. And we will raise the thresholds at which people start to pay tax.
So let's talk now to political advisor to Reform UK, Jack Anderton. Jack, good evening. Thank you for joining me. I was just looking at the front pages of the papers there to see whether this speech today from Nigel had made the front pages of the paper. Possibly not in the way that Nigel and Reform might have liked. And I've got this question for you. Why, with 3 years to go until the election, would Nigel announce today that he can't offer the tax cuts that he wanted?
Well, thank you for having me, Bev. And I think what the speech today was really about the current economic reality that Britain faces, and that actually Reform and Nigel Farage's ambitions and aspirations previously currently are not possible with our current dire economic situation. You know, what you've had over the last couple of decades is successive governments, Labour and Conservative, running deficit after deficit. You know, the deficit last year was 130 billion. And total government spending reached about 1.2 trillion a year. Let me just repeat that, 1.2 trillion a year. This is enormous amounts. And what the speech today was about was showing that Reform is a credible alternative to those two parties. And actually, Reform and Nigel Farage's ambitions are to cut taxes. But currently, with the economic situation, that is not a reality. And what Reform said today is that if they were to win the next election, then they would get the public finances under control, and only then would tax cuts be implemented.
So it's funny to have, I was going to say the leader of the opposition, but he's not even officially that, is he, of course? But it's funny to have somebody leading such a popular party that's leading in the polls to be talking to the public about the current state of the economy. You'd think that would be the job of the Prime Minister. So I am still a little curious as to why he's delivering what might be seen as bad news in 3 years' time under a Reform government. Is it just about perhaps wanting to be taken seriously? Because there will be those people who say, oh, well, he's just going to blow a massive hole in the finances. He's not got a serious plan. Whereas actually, to pedal back on that a little bit, Nigel, today, then maybe that does position Reform as a party of interest to those who might think, well, OK, well, maybe they are going to be realistic fiscally.
Well, the speech today positions Reform as the party that will tell voters the truth. And the truth is what I've just said, which is that the economic reality means that tax cuts are not feasible. So the speech today was about pitching reform to those voters that perhaps are not convinced by the other two parties and are still yet to be convinced by reform. And it's about, we ran our Summer of Crime campaign. And, over the next few weeks and starting from this week, we're running, our campaign on the economy. So it's about pitching to those voters who are concerned about, the cost of living, who are concerned about low wages, who are concerned that, they might not be able to meet the payroll for their small businesses. And it's about pitching to those people. And that's really what today's speech was about.
OK, it's his mate, President Trump, who's knocked him off the front page of some of the papers. Jack, what would Nigel think of this story, do you think, about the BBC stitching up President Trump in a panorama edit? Nigel Farage is no stranger to the BBC depicting some politicians as the Antichrist.
Well, I think to coin Donald Trump's favourite phrase, the BBC is probably sort of operating in what we would call fake news, clearly.
Well, there's another story on the front page of The Times that I want to just show you, Jack, which is about reform. And this is about reform councils unveiling plans to raise taxes by up to 5%. More than 2 million households living under reform-run councils, according to The Times, face tax rises of £127 million next year, despite promises to bring down bills. That is a reform-broken promise, is it not?
Well, I don't think any decisions have been made in terms of our councils, but what I would say is that you should look at the work that our councils are doing, which is attempting to save hundreds of millions of pounds on local government spending. Kent County Council are already doing that. We have our DOGE unit in the party, and then our councils also have their internal DOGE units as well. So what I would say is don't judge reform in local government in the first 6 months, judge us over the next couple of years.
OK, let's get a quick word from Thomas and Eric on this, if we can. Thomas, I know you have an interest in Reform UK. What did you make of Nigel's speech this morning? Are you curious, like I am, about the timing of it?
Yeah, I do think it was sort of unnecessary maybe to make those pledges. As you say, if you look at what most parties do, it's say what it takes to win and then make the tough decisions. So I'm not quite sure why he went out and did that. But also what I don't understand, they're talking about government spending is so high and all that. And I'm like, well, why don't we cut government spending? Why is it always got to be raising taxes? Why don't we get rid of the bureaucracy and all of these different things,
Eric, I don't know whether you are extremely familiar with Reform and Nigel Farage. Of course, Nigel is a household name here in America. As we just heard then, actually from Jack, this is Nigel just saying, well, look, this is the truth. This is important. This is the realistic financial position that we're in. So probably a good thing to tell the public.
Actually, I think it's very politically strategic. What he's doing is he's holding the current government's feet to the fire. He's saying, look, this is how bad the situation is, that I, as a politician who has made these grandiose offerings of what I would do, now I can no longer do it because of the financial straits that we're in. And now he actually places so much of the pressure on Keir Starmer to now actually respond to this. And I think these are questions that perhaps those who are actually in power might not want to answer. So I think it's actually a very good play because now it takes the onus off him. Also, it makes him look honest and transparent about what's actually happening and what's going on.
Jack, one of the things that Nigel was talking about today is this idea that there may be impending, it was a pessimistic speech by any definition, but that there may be an impending financial crash and there's so much uncertainty. Does he want to get ahead of that story so that if that does happen, he can turn around and say, I warned you?
The speech today was purely about pitching Nigel to those voters that I mentioned before, and about, as was just said on the panel, about recognizing the political reality of the situation that we are in. And it's about, Nigel said in his speech today that actually he anticipates an election in 2027. So we actually don't have the time, or the time that we would like perhaps, to get ready for when reform and if reform is elected in 2027. So in terms of the timing as well, it's about making sure that we have a suitable offering to take to the voters in 2027 if an election is held then.
OK, all right. Thank you, Jack. Good to see you. Political advisor to Reform UK, Jack Anderton there. 2027, Thomas.
Well, that's scary because it's a long way off.
Well, it's
You're going to have 2 more years of Keir Starmer?
We've got 2 more years of Keir Starmer, but that also feels a little sooner than we might have thought.
Well, it should come tomorrow. I'm like, you've got to save England. But, and the scary thing is that will be President Trump will be ending his term by then. So if we're talking that's a long time away, and Keir's going to do a lot of damage in that time.
Yeah. Right, still to come this evening on The Late Show Live, we're going to be going live to Rio de Janeiro.
Yeah, unfortunately, the heavens have opened, Bev, but it's lovely and hot here, and Prince William had a very packed day of engagements, including a bit of a jolly on Copacabana Beach, doing something very un-Prince-like indeed. Stay tuned to find out.
Well, I, for one, am fascinated about what that might be. Don't go anywhere. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Oh, look at this. Wars.
President Trump wanted to make sure we saw the list of 8 international conflicts he says he's been able to end since returning to office.
And you have branded yourself the peace president.
Well, I think I did pretty good. I solved, those are 8 of the 9 wars I solved. You know how I solved them? I said, in many cases, in 60%, I said, if you don't stop fighting, I'm putting tariffs on both of your countries. And
That was American President Donald Trump outlining the 8 wars that he ended in 8 months. That was on 60 Minutes. We're going to be talking about that more in just a moment. But first of all, Prince William has touched down in Rio de Janeiro for his favourite event of the year. He's hosting his 5th annual Earthshot Prize Awards, representing his father at the major international climate conference. And the Prince was presented with the keys to Rio de Janeiro as he began a 5-day visit in the region. So joining me now is GB News' royal correspondent Cameron Walker, who is in Rio for us. Cameron, I think the rain's coming down there, isn't it? But I'm sure it's absolutely beautiful still. Oh, it looks like you got rid of your brolly. That's good. Right, what did Prince William do that was not Prince-like on the beach? My mind is spinning.
Well, I mean, it was a little bit odd, Bev, to be honest. Yes, the rain has stopped. So, picture the scene. It's a secret visit to Copacabana Beach, which is quite difficult when in the first instance because it's a very packed tourist beach. He turns up, the crowds start flocking. He does lots of walking. He does lots of big walkabout, meeting lots of members of the public, and then he joins in a local volleyball game with a load of teenagers. And it was planned, and he was speaking to a famous volleyball player and saying, "Okay, let's join in, let's join in." And then the volleyball player said, "Oh, well, join in on my team." And the Prince of Wales took off his shoes and socks and properly got stuck in. And when I say properly stuck in, Bev, he was diving into the sand, wearing his chinos and wearing his shirt. He was trying, but I could tell because he was playing against teenagers, but he was trying not to have a Boris Johnson moment. You know when he ploughed into a kid rugby player a couple of years ago, Bev, and knocked one onto the ground. He was trying not to perhaps do that. He basically said to the people he was playing volleyball with, he could have done that all day, but I think his team were trying to shimmy him along. He also watched a demonstration of the local lifeguards here on Copacabana Beach who rescue thousands of people every year, Bev. I couldn't quite believe how many people they rescue because the sea current here is incredibly strong. But of course, as you said, the whole point of him being here is his environmental Earthshot Prize. And a lot of people, I think, including our viewers, do get turned off when we talk about climate change and the environment because there's a lot of scaremongering and there's a lot of doom and gloom. And Prince William is trying to change that, and he's trying to talk about the solutions and how it can potentially save people money in the future. So it's all about investing in those solutions which can be scaled up to repair the planet on a big global scale. So that's all happening on Wednesday. But today was very much the welcome to Rio. And as you said, he was given the keys to the city of Rio by the city's mayor. And I think we can get complacent sometimes about our royal family, particularly with the scandal that's happened over the last couple of weeks with Prince Andrew, his uncle, of course. But when you see the crowds that turn up to see the Prince of Wales, who clearly is globally famous, I think perhaps it's a reminder, or some people perhaps would see it as a reminder, that the royal family does do quite a lot for brand Britain on the global stage. And we saw it, didn't we, with President Trump just a couple of months ago. Bev, you and I were at Windsor Castle seeing President Trump alongside the royal family, and he was clearly in awe of them. And that kind of essence, I think, resonates around the world.
You know, he looks in really good nick, Cameron. Maybe that's not an appropriate way to talk about our future king, but we know he's always quite sporty.
Yeah.
I mean, he was quite a good competitive swimmer himself, actually, when he was at school. And I have it on very good authority that his children are also good swimmers, and he spends a lot of time talking to their swimming coach on the poolside at competitions. And so he looks like he's been working out. He looks really happy as well. Do you know what, Cameron? It's really nice to see him looking so relaxed because he's obviously had a huge amount of stress in the last year with his dad getting cancer, with his wife getting cancer, with his brother being an absolute blooming nightmare. It's really nice to see him relaxing, and he does love this event, doesn't he?
Yeah, he certainly does. It's certainly his passion, Bev. And I think you're right. Over the last year, he's certainly relaxed a lot more. I think he seems a lot more content as well. And as you say, he's been incredibly sporty. Not only was it the volleyball earlier today, but we were at a local stadium here in Brazil, and he was spending time with local school kids, having a kickabout with them on the football pitch, who are from the local favelas, about giving them resilience, giving them a helping hand in life. It was a local initiative that he was supporting there. And football's another key passion of his, isn't it? He was telling them how he supports Aston Villa, a British club. I'm not sure the kids in the favela knew what Aston Villa was, but the point still stands. He's using sport to level people to level people up alongside some very famous football faces here in Brazil. And it's a bit of an all-rounder, isn't it, Prince William? We've got his sport, we've got his environment, and of course, mindful of the fact he is future king. So that soft diplomatic power is shining through too.
We're really getting a glimpse here, Cameron, of what the royal family might look like under King William, aren't we? And actually, they could do with some good news. The timing of this for the royal family could not be better in terms of the public perception and whether they could have a future in the UK and on the global stage, given what's been going on with his disgraced Uncle Andrew.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's very clear, I think, from speaking to his staff and obviously observing William, that he clearly wants to move on and put what happened with his uncle behind him. As far as the royal family concerned, I think they are hoping that the Prince Andrew scandal is done and dusted. They've kind of done all they can. It's basically a guessing game as to what else is going to be in the Epstein files. Are there going to be other scandals we're not aware of yet relating to? Well, I keep wanting to say Prince Andrew. Of course, he no longer is Prince Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. But I don't see a future for Andrew in Prince William's firm when he does eventually become king, however long that may be. But I think William said in himself he wants change, and I think that's what we'll see under King William.
OK, thank you, Cameron. Have a wonderful time, and maybe we'll talk to you tomorrow. Enjoy Brazil. Still to come in the next hour here on The Late Show Live. The UK has recorded its biggest increase in asylum claims across Europe. Why? We'll have all the details here on GB News. First, though, a quick look at the weather.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's another dull and damp day for many of us, wet in places as well, particularly western parts of the country. But with moisture-laden southwesterly winds, it's also going to be a mild one. Now, it won't be raining everywhere through the day. Parts of northern Scotland and Northern Ireland will see some brighter spells in between showers, the showers most frequent in the far northwest. But across much of England and Wales, it's very rainy, with the wettest weather increasingly towards South Wales and the southwest of England. Rain warning in force. It'll be breezy here as well, but at the same time it's going to be mild, 15 or 16 Celsius in the south, 13, 14 further north. The wet weather just continues into the evening rush hour across South Wales, southwest England. There'll also be spells of rain further north. This bout of wet weather affecting much of northwest Scotland, extending into parts of Northern Ireland as an area of showers. Likewise, southern Scotland seeing some rain, although the central belt at times avoiding the wetter weather. Northern England, drier for a few hours before this area of rain across Wales. The south and southwest starts to move northwards. So all in all, a very soggy end to the day on Tuesday. And it stays cloudy, it stays breezy overnight, with those spells of rain becoming less heavy, less persistent, but a damp look overnight for much of England and Wales, southern Scotland, Northern Ireland. Clear spells for the north of Scotland and cooler here, but elsewhere it's double figures, if not teens, as we begin the day on Wednesday. And Wednesday does start off with some heavy rain in places. Initially, the focus will be across the south and southwest once again. Then those rain bands move north. So if you are heading out for a bonfire display Wednesday evening, there will be some showery rain around. A little bit of uncertainty about exactly where these outbreaks of rain end up, but it's most likely to be wettest towards the north and the west. Some drier and clearer spells towards the southeast.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though. I'm so surprised. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Trump family have hit back at the BBC for stitching up the president in Panorama. Thanks for joining me on The Late Show Live tonight.
You are fake news.
Sir,
go ahead.
Can you state categorically that nobody... No, Mr. President-elect...
Turns out the BBC is fake news and it's taken on the wrong president. Exhibit A.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight.
Right now, the White House is considering its options, we're being told. And tonight we're going to be joined by someone with inside knowledge of the situation, the man who broke the story, and a very keen MAGA supporter to tell us her thoughts. Also tonight.
We want to cut taxes, of course we do. But we understand substantial tax cuts, given the dire state of debt and our finances, are not realistic at this current moment in time.
Will a reform government reduce your taxes as previously promised? Well, it's not looking good. But a Nigel Farage aide joins me to put up a defence. We're going to be diving headfirst into the stories from tomorrow's newspapers, hours before they hit the shelves. We are live, of course, in Washington, D.C., just yards from the White House, bringing you the stories that America is talking about and that matter to Britain too, including this. Good vibes in the Trump administration. That is their official TikTok account. I am Bev Turner. This is The Late Show Live. Welcome to the second hour where the stories get faster. The brakes have been dropped, so stay with me. The BBC has been accused of doctoring a speech by Donald Trump, making him appear to encourage the Capitol Hill riots in 2021. The Telegraph says that it's seen a dossier on BBC bias compiled by a recent member of the Corporation Standards Committee that claims a Panorama programme broadcast a week before the American election in 2024 completely misled viewers by splicing together footage from things that the American president had said 1 hour apart.
They played the following clip.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you. And we fight. We fight like hell.
But Trump didn't, in fact, say this at all. The BBC spliced together two clips that took place 54 minutes apart. So let's go through it again.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you.
Now, see there, between Capitol and, that's a cut. Here's what Trump actually said.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
It's different. It wasn't until nearly an hour later that he then said the second part of the BBC's version.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we fight. We fight like hell.
So that was Gordon Rayner there from the Daily Telegraph explaining the story that he broke. And Donald Trump Jr., the president's son, has lashed out this evening, saying the fake news reporters in the UK are just as dishonest as the ones here in America. Not true, Donald Trump Jr., I promise you. That's why GB News is in town. Meanwhile, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson has called for someone at the BBC to take responsibility and resign, calling the situation a total disgrace. A BBC spokesperson has told GB News, while we don't comment on leaked documents, when the BBC receives feedback, it takes it seriously and considers it carefully. Well, joining me now is Dr. Gina Loudon to comment on this situation. Gina, you know the President, and what will his reaction be to this? He'll be thinking about it right now, I imagine. What do you think he'll do next?
I think he'll fight like hell because that's kind of his MO on these sorts of things. He has been so wronged on this. I can't believe they thought they would get away with this. That's what I can't believe. How does a purported news organization think that they can literally edit and censor an American president and get away with it? Thank God GB News is in town.
Oh, thank you, Gina. That's a lovely thing to hear. I think what's remarkable as well is this programme, Panorama, is a very well-regarded news documentary on the BBC. It's been around for years, absolutely decades of Panorama. And I think they just presumed, as you say, that they could get away with it. And of course, they were talking about events from 2021, and they were broadcasting this in 2024. I can't imagine being in the mindset of an editor or a presenter, a journalist, and splicing footage to be so misleading. I think it demonstrates a real arrogance on the part of the BBC to think they could get away with it.
Yes, and kudos to the whistleblower, the leaker, for saying, my goodness, he said he had approached them with other things, and they had just not cared about it. How is this even a substantial news organization? How are they possibly funded? And who could trust them to get their news from them? It's one thing had they said something along the lines of, we believe this is what he wanted. You know, at that point, we didn't know this was a planned insurrection. Now we know this. Now we're watching all the evidence come out, and we absolutely have the evidence and know what happened. But at the time, it's understandable they didn't know. To have said that would have been all right, that they didn't know. But they're not even saying that. He was excusing it and saying, no, this is what our news organization does. I guess this is just their modus operandi. And I really do hope that they will take a look at better news organizations like GB News. I watched your news when I was in the UK for an extended time recently, and I was very pleased. You all present news measured, both sides. You're not biased, but this is extreme bias. It should never be tolerated in a free country. And if it is tolerated and if it's funded by taxpayers, God forbid, something needs to change. I hope it does, for the sake of all of the UK.
Well, yes, absolutely, Gina. I couldn't agree more. We've seen Donald Trump Jr. come out and put this tweet out already quite quickly, saying that it's fake news. And I would expect, I imagine, that the president will be this evening thinking about this here, just down the road at the White House, working out his next steps. Does he come out and say something on Truth Social? Would he be seeking legal advice? Do you think he would have the mettle, the backbone, to take an organisation as emblematic as the BBC, because it's the state broadcaster in the UK. It is funded by a licence. You have to pay it whether you watch it or not if you're watching other certain channels. Will he want to take that on, Gina?
I would never get out in front of the president on something like this, but I also would not expect him to do any less than his absolute best to be sure that people who are going to present fake news are not tolerated anywhere in the world, you know, because this kind of lying, this kind of deception, it can start wars. It can overturn presidencies, right? It can put people in prison that are innocent. There are a lot of ramifications to presenting completely and utterly fake, edited news when you know that's what it is. And apparently this isn't the first time, at least according to this whistleblower. So I would expect the president to do an excellent job of taking this on in every way that he can. And we've seen him do it before. We've seen him sue other news organizations and win. It wouldn't surprise me if that were the next steps he took.
Let me bring in my panel. Eric and Eric Hammond, Thomas Corbett-Dillon are with me in the studio now. Eric, I'd love you to respond to what Gina was saying there, because your point earlier was it doesn't really matter what the BBC did or didn't do. Donald Trump still incited an insurrection. Correct me if I've got that wrong. I don't want to misquote you. So what would your reaction be to Dr. Loudon?
It still remains the same. What we saw from the BBC still does not fundamentally change what took place on that day, which was a president who instigated an attack on the U.S. government and the key pillar of our democracy, which was the U.S. Capitol. That was the People's House that was attacked. And we saw the president, there was no shame, there was no contrition from him about what happened. What we're talking about in terms of what the BBC did, I think that there is discussion to talk about that. But in terms of Donald Trump's guilt, in terms of Donald Trump's actions on that day, they were horrible. And I do believe there needs to be some accountability for what took place.
Okay, let's bring Gina. If you could react to that, I'd be most grateful.
Yeah, it's pretty fundamental. You really can't have an insurrection without a gun, and there was not a gun at that. So it wasn't an insurrection. It was a planned surrection. And those of us in the United States who actually read our news know that they didn't want that second congressional vote to come up. They had a first and a second on a congressional vote that would have overturned 2 states and could have reversed the election. Those like Nancy Pelosi, who refused the help that President Trump offered her to send in the National Guard, she refused that. The police officers who opened the barricade, we all know this was part of a planned surrection. Donald Trump said, peacefully and prayerfully go and be a part and make your voices heard. He never said anything along the lines of any sort of insurrection language, and it would require weapons to have an insurrection. I know a lot of these J6ers. I don't know if you do, but I know a lot of them. I've gotten to know them since, by the grace of God, they were let out of prison, as they should have been, without trials, many of them. But they were absolutely mistreated and used by our system. Thank God President Trump came along and righted that ship, and the evidence is clear. There was no insurrection. Those people literally thought they were there for a peaceful protest, and it's shameful the way that you depict what happened that day when the evidence proves quite the other.
Thomas, go on, Eric. I feel like you should defend yourself.
Sure, because she's living in an alternate reality, because what actually took place that day were we actually saw police officers who were attacked and killed. We saw lawmakers who actually had to place riot gear. We saw the vice president of the United States, who himself, they had to remove him and his family because of the violence that was inflicted upon the Capitol by these perpetrators who were found guilty in a court of law or who actually pled guilty to charges and plea agreements, hundreds of them. And of course, Donald Trump issuing these pardons, which again makes clear that the rule of law that has been sacrosanct, that has withstood the test of time, is now actually gone under this president.
Thomas, would you like to come in?
Well, I think it is important to remind you that no police officers died on January 6th. That is fake. That has been debunked.
Thank you.
And, you know, the whole thing was just complete chaos. But I think going back to the original point of this is one of the president's passion projects. The first thing he did was pardon all the January 6th people. The fact that he now has this, the BBC claim against him, I think this is going to be a big story. Maybe tomorrow we'll see. Maybe he hasn't seen it yet. I know he's very busy. But he's going to latch onto this, I think. And the BBC could be in trouble. There might be some couple of billions that need to be paid to the president for this fake news story.
I'm interested, Dr. Loudon, to hear your opinion on what you do about people like Eric Ham. Eric, we love you. We like having you here. Don't worry. But when there is such a discrepancy between events, just the facts of what happened and who did what, do you just feel, Gina, that some people will never be convinced?
Yeah, absolutely. Facts don't care about Eric's feelings, but maybe the BBC does. Maybe he could go get a job there, because it sounds like that's where he's getting his news. That's not where I'm getting my news. That's obviously not where your other guest is getting his news. And that's, thank God, not where Americans get their news. That's why they gave Donald Trump this victory, so he could make this right. That's why it was the first promise that he had made and kept. And that's why he's so popular still today in America. He's changed politics forever.
But let me ask you, Eric, as somebody that does go on the BBC, can you quite consciously see the treatment of the president within the BBC and how you would be treated on a show compared to here, where you've got pushback from 3 people saying there might be a different version of events here?
To be clear, I actually am a paid political contributor for the BBC. I appear on the BBC regularly, and I do speak factually about what happens in terms of our politics, our policies, and we have to be clear. There was an attack. Now, you could say it was not an attack, but police officers were attacked that day. The Capitol was ransacked that day. Members of Congress had to be removed that day. The vice president had to also be removed that day because it was not safe for him. Now, Thomas and yourself can actually say that did not happen. But in fact, it did happen. And Donald Trump was placed as the culprit of all of that. Now, you can say Donald Trump was not culpable for any of that, but he was impeached for what actually took place that day. And history is going to remember that, and that will be part of his legacy as president of the United States.
But the impeachment led to nothing. He was pardoned by the House of Representatives.
He was not convicted. You're right. He was not convicted by the Senate, but he is the only president in history that has been impeached twice.
But that's because he's so disliked by everybody that doesn't agree with him. Like, there is a visceral.
Everyone can have their feelings, and if we want to deny what happened that day, then feel free, have at it. But of course, history will not be changed just because the GB News says that Donald Trump was not involved in an insurrection on the U.S. Capitol.
Well, it happened. It isn't
and Donald Trump is culpable for it.
It isn't that the GB News is saying that. This is that the Daily Telegraph, a very well-respected newspaper, has taken the time and the effort to look at this report that was meant to stay within the BBC. They did not want the public to see this, and they've revealed this to the world. world that this is just one example of an editorial stitch-up, and there have been millions when it comes to President Trump. I used to fall for them. Believe me, the first term I had Trump derangement syndrome. I am one of those interesting people who put out the noise, and I started listening. And it's surprising when you start listening and you turn off the BBC, how your mind can suddenly realise that there are alternative events that we're not being told. And I must say that as a viewer that would have been watching the BBC in 2016, 2017, I'm angry that they were lying to me then. I'm angry that I used to work for a different media outlet that used to lie all the time about who this man was and who he is today. And thank goodness for people who now are able to talk about Donald Trump in a different way. And it doesn't mean, Eric, that GB News loves everything that Donald Trump does. There will be presenters on our channel that do not like him personally and do not like his policies. But we are a broad church, and we will accept all debates and all perceptions of President Trump, because I don't think I can think of another outlet, Thomas, can you, in the UK that would ever say anything positive about Donald Trump. There are very few politicians that fall into that. Nigel Farage is the other one. And is it as simple as the right wing versus the left wing media, Thomas?
I think it is, and I think it is a shame, as you say, that there is no one in the UK that's willing to actually say, well, you know, even just looking at some of his policies aside, I think some of his policies could do very well in the UK, but because President Trump has presented them, they must never be discussed. You know, he's so evil and such a, you know, out-of-touch man. But I think your point is great, because this is the one that we found out how many smaller decisions when it came to, you know, an interview guest. They say, well, that guy kind of likes Trump. Let's go for the guy that hates Trump. This is all the way through the BBC, and we see it, particularly living here, you see the difference. So I think it's quite scary that they were willing to put it on a panorama show. They were willing to do this. That's quite scary.
Isn't it? Last word to you, Gina. What would you like the president to do next?
I hope that he will do everything he can to further expose and shine light on this issue that has been such a bag of lies. We know that the feds were involved. We know that this was planned by the left to set him up to block that vote so that the election couldn't be rightfully overturned by our Congress. And we know that President Trump really did want the true vote to be seen that day. That's what he was fighting for, nothing more. I think it's such incredible evidence that Eric sits here on your program tonight, being able to give his opinion, which I think is so important. I used to be asked on the BBC. I think folks like Thomas and I probably aren't asked on the BBC very often anymore, because I don't know that they're interested in presenting both sides. So kudos to those news outlets that are, and thank God for President Trump, who's doing what every American president should do, and that's fighting for the truth for the American people. That's what every leader of every country should do.
Yeah, and every news channel as well. Unfortunately, it's only us. Dr. Gina Loudon, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Oh, such a great debate. I'd love to know your thoughts at home. gbnews.com/your say. Still to come this evening on The Late Show Live.
I want the UK economy to be as strong as it possibly can be, and so the UK can be the best ally to the US that it possibly can be.
The American ambassador to the UK has urged Sir Keir Starmer to drill in the North Sea in order for the UK to be the best ally to America that it can possibly be. Is it time for Britain to drill, baby, drill? This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News. First, though, Britain has recorded the largest rise in asylum claims in Europe last year. The number of applications surged to a record high, with a staggering 108,000 claims in 2024. That's a 28% increase from 2023. Meanwhile, the number of asylum claims in France and Germany actually fell Well, President Trump has recently announced that he will limit the number of refugees admitted to the US to only 7,500 over the next year, which is a tiny number. So should Britain be doing the same? Let's speak to criminal justice and immigration law expert Nora Demleitner. Nora, thank you so much for joining me. So why have applications to the UK rocketed whilst the rest of Europe has declined?
I've seen a number of explanations for that, but it doesn't seem to be quite obvious what is going on there. But it looks like the largest increase is coming from Pakistan, which of course has historic connections to the UK, and also you have an established Pakistani population, which always then has a draw to new incomers. Of course, that doesn't explain why there are so few people coming to Germany and France, but presumably that's third country applications that the countries are coming through, they have to apply there and then can be returned. Now, you started on talking about the U.S. refugee numbers, and I just want to be careful because we have two different sets of numbers in the U.S. So we have refugees and we have asylum seekers. And the refugee numbers is the one that the president sets together with Congress. So they can set a ceiling because those are people outside the United States. So you have to be really carefully vetted in a third country to even come to the U.S. And that used to be people who are coming from very far away. In the last 10 years, it was really people from Myanmar, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Iraq who benefited from that scheme. And you're right, the drop to 7,500 is really unprecedented in terms of a ceiling. The last few years, it was actually over 100,000, but historically it's been about 60,000 people annually who would come under that program. Asylum numbers are different because you can't control them, you can't set them, but they're also expected to drop in the U.S. because you have many fewer people coming to the country, which really started under President Biden because it became obvious that the southern border had just become too porous and too many people were coming in.
So you draw a distinction definition-wise between a refugee and an asylum seeker. What is the difference then? I understand what you're saying. A refugee would come from maybe a war zone. An asylum seeker would come from where?
It could be the same, but it has to do with how they are processed. So a refugee will be processed outside the United States. Usually they've left their home country, have sought refuge in another country, and now have reported to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, or they're working with the State Department. And so all the processing happens abroad, and then they kind of come to the US border and they're already recognized as a refugee. Asylum seekers are different. They could come from the same country, but they are basically coming to the US border. And at that point, they're saying, please let me in. Sometimes they're asking for asylum right at the border. Sometimes they're not raising an asylum claim until they've already been in the country, often in deportation proceedings. So it's complicated, and I think most Americans don't understand the difference. Different process, different agencies actually doing this. And so it looks like we're comparing really apples and oranges when we're comparing the refugee ceiling numbers and the asylum seekers in the UK.
I see. Really interesting. Thank you, Nora. Really fascinating explanation there. Nora Demleitner, they're a criminal justice and immigration law expert. We've got Benjamin Busworth in the studio in London to come to now. Benjamin, good evening to you. I'm sorry we're coming to you so late. I imagine you've been waiting there since you finished with Patrick earlier, but nice to see you, and particularly love to hear your thoughts on this topic about asylum seekers. Why are we seeing so many applications when Europe is going in the other direction? It's simply because we're so generous, isn't it?
Well, I think the link of many people being from Pakistan and the lots of Pakistanis here may be a quite rational explanation, the one offered by the lawyer. But actually, we still get far fewer claims than France, Greece, Italy, Spain. They get far higher numbers, and indeed they have in the last year. So, you know, I don't think that we take a disproportionate number. Also, if you look at how many of them are being accepted under the Conservative government, 99% of Afghanis were given the right to stay, but that's now collapsed to 38%. So they might be applying to stay here, but they're not getting the right to stay.
Are they getting sent home, though, Benjamin?
Well, here's the difficulty, actually. With Afghanis, because we don't recognise the Taliban as the government of Afghanistan, all of those people don't get the right to stay, but they do by proxy. So there are some pretty peculiar situations there that don't really help anybody.
Thomas, do you want to come in on this?
Well, I really don't understand why we are giving asylum to people from quite nice countries. I think Pakistan is quite nice. I haven't heard of the civil war in Pakistan any recently. And I particularly don't understand why we're allowing men to come in. If we were going to give asylum to anyone, you'd think it'd be women and children from war-torn countries. It seems to be anyone that has got, you know, the ability to apply seems to be able to come to the UK. It makes no sense to me. I think the US has done a smart decision of limiting the numbers. I really don't know why England does not limit their numbers, but you know, that's obviously down to the Labour government.
That's a very good point. I mean, we have a population of about 70 million. Eric, you've got about 350 million, I think, plus your square footage, let's face it, is a lot bigger than ours. You can take a lot more. So how do you judge that figure of 7,500 refugees, the limit that Donald Trump is placing on it? That feels very small.
Well, look, President Trump ran on this idea of, and he didn't actually, I think, discern between refugee and those seeking asylum. He basically was clear that he was cutting off the borders, and we saw him go very aggressively after both Canada and Mexico, where he thought the borders were porous on both sides. And so I think this has been an issue where the president believes he won on this issue. He has a mandate to actually tackle this issue. This was an issue that vexed the Biden administration the entire 4 years they were there. And Donald Trump has gone after those not only attempting to come into the country, but those that he already believes are in the country illegally. And he's making every effort to try to move them out, even if it means trampling on the Constitution.
Benjamin, what do you make of the fact that Donald Trump has reduced people entering the country illegally to zero? And it's not even like that's him cooking the books. It is statistically 0 people entering the country illegally for several months back to back now. Our Prime Minister should surely be on the phone to him almost all day going, right, just tell me, I want some tips. Have you done that? Just help me out here. There's no inclination that he wants to learn from him.
Well, I mean, nobody has entered the UK on a small boat for 11 days, so maybe we're just a couple of months off matching Trump's record. But I think there are two things there.
OK, let me just ask you, Benjamin, let me ask you, because obviously we're here in lovely sunny autumnal Washington. What's the weather like in England at the moment?
It's been quite stormy. It's, but I'll...
Funny that.
That may have affected it, but look, it's still a good thing to have nobody for 11 days. I think there are two things. It's obvious that both in the US and the UK, people voted to stop people coming into their countries illegally. And that is a very rational thing to have. That is the nature of a nation state. And so it's obviously a good thing to have 0 illegal entries. But what I think is actually quite shameful is to then say that you won't take anybody who is fleeing a war zone, who is in a horrendous situation. 7,500 is almost nothing in a country of the scale of the US. I think that is a shameful way for rich countries to behave, and I wouldn't want the UK to follow that route.
You see, Donald Trump would just say, and I have to say, I'm starting to move in this direction as well, and it's heartbreaking for people. I think for me, especially mothers and children escaping war zones and famine, and it's hideous. I'd love to think we could take loads of people. We just don't have the resources, we don't have the space, we don't have the capacity, let's face it, to do that. But I also worry increasingly, Benjamin, about our willingness to take people from what might be described as not just war zones, but trauma zones. Places where they have been exposed to unimaginable violence and maybe the normalising of violence. You don't have to be a psychologist to know that the impact of witnessing violence, warfare, murder, killings can be imported into other safe countries. People bring that mental disorder with them, and I think we've been incredibly relaxed about that issue for decades. Do you not see it in that way, Ben?
I mean, I think Britain has a proud history when it comes to refugees. You know, we were a much poorer country when we took Jewish refugees in the wake of the Second World War, and they will have been through all sorts of atrocities, and they've contributed massively to Britain. I think when you look at a situation like Sudan, which is the worst humanitarian disaster the world has seen at the moment, and where there is a genocide, I think there are people there that deserve a right. But I've also visited a lot of these countries. I've been to Afghanistan, to Syria, to Lebanon, and, you know, there are people I've met in those countries who have been through untold disasters, who are the most amazing people in the world. Some of them have learnt English without ever meeting an English person before me. They are incredibly passionate, hard-working, and actually I think a country like Britain or America can often benefit massively from them. Just to give you a little fact, I think 14 of the 20 richest people in Britain weren't born in Britain. So the idea that we don't benefit from foreigners coming here from whatever description is just wrong.
Maybe they were rich when they arrived, though, Benjamin. It might be that they didn't drag themselves up from poverty, having arrived from a war zone. I'm guessing they're probably, Chinese, Arabs, born to princes and kings of Saudi. But we'll be back with you in just a minute, Benjamin, because we need to move on. Good to see you. Right, still to come this evening. Remember, there's no breaks. We're just letting you know what we're doing. Still to come on The Late Show Live.
Like England. You know, where they lock people up for memes and stuff. Literally. Yeah.
12,000 people this year.
12,000?
12,000.
Elon Musk was left stunned there after podcaster Joe Rogan revealed those shocking statistics about Britain's so-called war on free speech during his globally famous podcast. We've got more on that and the front pages to discuss. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's another dull and damp day for many of us, wet in places as well, particularly western parts of the country, but with moisture-laden southwesterly winds, it's also going to be a mild one. Now, it won't be raining everywhere through the day. Parts of northern Scotland and Northern Ireland will see some brighter spells in between showers, the showers most frequent in the far northwest. But across much of England and Wales, it's very rainy, with the wettest weather increasingly towards South Wales and the southwest of England, rain warning in force. It'll be breezy here as well, but at the same time it's going to be mild, 15 or 16 Celsius in the south, 13, 14 further north. The wet weather just continues into the evening rush hour across South Wales, southwest England. There'll also be spells of rain further north. This bout of wet weather affecting much of northwest Scotland, extending into parts of Northern Ireland as an area of showers. Likewise, southern Scotland seeing some rain, although the central belt at times avoiding the wetter weather. Northern England, drier for a few hours before this area of rain across Wales. The south and southwest starts to move northwards. So all in all, a very soggy end to the day on Tuesday. And it stays cloudy, it stays breezy overnight, with those spells of rain becoming less heavy, less persistent, but a damp look overnight for much of England and Wales, southern Scotland, Northern Ireland. Clear spells for the north of Scotland and cooler here, but elsewhere it's double figures, if not teens, as we begin the day on Wednesday. And Wednesday does start off with some heavy rain in places. Initially, the focus will be across the south and southwest once again. Then those rain bands move north. So if you are heading out for a bonfire display Wednesday evening, there will be some showery rain around. A little bit of uncertainty about exactly where these outbreaks of rain end up, but it's most likely to be wettest towards the north and the west. Some drier and clearer spells towards the southeast.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live with me, Bev Turner, only on GB News. Now let's have a look at your front pages in the UK, shall we? The Metro is leading with 3 missed chances to stop train knife man as the slasher suspect appears in court. The Sun is leading with the same story, train suspect knifed 2. before attack. Incredibly distressing for the people who were injured to think that this man was free to walk around after being involved allegedly in other altercations. The Daily Express are leading with the police probing those 3 incidents before the train attack, with the suspect Anthony Williams, 32 years old, being named and his picture on the front page of all the press. The Times, they're also running with a different story, as well as the one that we have been talking about. They're leading at the top of the paper with Reform Council's unveiling plans to raise taxes by up to 5%. And the Daily Mail are talking about Rachel Reeves softening us up for a tax betrayal. She pledged to the CBI in November last year. It's really clear, she said, "I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes." Oh dear. The New York Post, now it's a massive day in America tomorrow because they've got the mayoral election in New York, and the New York Post is saying that Cuomo would beat Mamdani in a head-to-head race for New York City mayor. It says the gap is closing in a 3-way contest, according to a bombshell poll. And the New York Times is leading with China started separating its economy from the West years ago. They're saying 2 decades of sustained effort to build national self-reliance and minimise imports have antagonised trade partners but fortified a bulwark against conflicts. Interesting. Let's talk to Benjamin Butterworth over in London again now. Benjamin, what shall we talk about? You've been talking about the news all evening, so let me go to you and ask which story that you would like to tackle now.
Well, I think the obvious one is the tax hikes that Rachel Reeves is reportedly going to be doing. That's on all the front pages when it's not the train attack allegations. And so apparently, the budget is going to be on the 26th of November, which means that she's probably just finished writing it because it spends 3 weeks with the Office of Budget Responsibility. Now, the Daily Mail there has the front page that she's softening us up for tax betrayal. The newspaper has a very similar one. It says Reeves bid to win over voters with big tax hikes. I'm not sure how that's going to go. But the suggestion is that if you earn over £46,000 a year, then you could have 2% added to your income tax. Now, I think this will be pretty unpopular, but it will also, as the Daily Mail points out, be a breach of Labour's manifesto pledge, which said no tax hikes on working people, so no national insurance or income tax hikes. And the Daily Mail carries that quote: "I'm really clear. I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes." That was Rachel Reeves just a matter of months ago, late last year.
As a journalist, Benjamin, what do you make of this story? You're familiar with the Daily Mail because I think this is a really interesting headline and an interesting quote. It feels a bit like the newspaper are holding her to account, and for anybody that's watching this doesn't know, the Daily Mail is a Conservative supporting newspaper, but in the run-up to the last election, remind me, Benjamin, they weren't entirely on board with the Conservatives, were they, at the last minute?
No, I don't think anybody was, though.
No, they weren't. No, good point. There was nobody. But what I'm saying is you would expect them to be much more positive about this in terms of supporting a Conservative government. But saying that she's softening us up is, in a way, the newspaper are softening us up while simultaneously managing to criticise the Chancellor. Like, it is helping us to prepare as the British public.
Yeah, and I think that's actually probably why these claims have been leaked that tax rises are coming. In fact, that is the newspaper's suggestion, that they are trying to get this in the public mind so people are prepared for a raise in about 3 weeks' time on the 26th of November. But do you know what? We already have, under the last Conservative government, the highest tax burden in 70 years. So the suggestion of new income taxes, which is what the Daily Mail is suggesting here, I think will be very unpopular. The flip side, though, is that the bills have to be paid somehow, and Rachel Reeves has said that her fiscal rules are quote-unquote ironclad. So how do you pay all the bills if you don't put taxes up?
Let's bring in the panel here. Thomas Corbett-Dillon, Eric Ham are still with me. Thomas, you are a Brit, and when you hear Rachel Reeves being talked about in this way, does your heart sink for the UK that we've got more tax hikes coming?
It does, and also I'm quite glad that I seem to have escaped the because I'm pretty sure there's going to be an exit tax being put on as well for any of these billionaires that try and leave. That'll come quite soon. But I have a radical idea. How about we cut spending? No one ever seems to talk about that. You know, as Benjamin's saying, someone's got to pay the bills. Why don't we try and lower those bills? The bills are so high, but they just keep increasing the taxes. The British people are being taxed within an inch of their life. You know, everyone knows that. Everyone in the UK is struggling. I talk to my friends in London, Friday nights, everything's empty, no one's got any money. Meanwhile, here, we're living in the golden age of America because Trump is doing things differently. Why are they trying to do the same old things that they've been doing for the last 50 years instead of trying something new? So I think the UK is in... I can't believe we've got another however many years till the new Prime Minister takes over. But.
Well, go on, Benjamin. You look like a man who might have a bit of money on a Friday night. You were scoffing at the idea of Thomas suggesting that you might not.
Well, first of all, you know, London and other major cities are full of people on Friday nights. The idea that nobody is going out is nonsense. But actually, look at the facts. Britain has, the UK has the second highest growth rate of the G7. And what's happened to the US? The economic growth figures in the US are almost half what they were a year ago under Joe Biden. So something's gone pretty wrong in just 12 months over there.
Eric, would you like to respond to that? Is our economy here in America going downwards?
Absolutely, it is. Inflation is still on the rise. You've got now 40 million people who are not receiving their government benefits. You've got 24 million people who are looking at health costs increasing. Donald Trump is hosting these lavish, expensive parties. He's building a $300 million ballroom. And yet what we continue to see is that people are hurting as prices are continuing to rise. The price of beef is going up. Farmers are scrambling, trying to figure out how to save their farms. And what we continue to hear is that from the president is that the economy is doing great. One of the good things that he gets from a government shutdown is, of course, many of those agencies that actually provide that information are not available to actually show just how bad the economy is, because what Donald Trump promised certainly isn't happening. In fact, what we're getting instead is a mirage.
Eric Ham there securing his next booking with the BBC, I think it's fair to say. Thomas, you were shaking your head.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think it's true. And if you look in the comparison to the UK and the US is certainly doing much better than the UK is. But you know, I just don't think that this idea that they can just keep taxing and taxing everyone, it's not sustainable. And I saw a nice proposal. Why don't we start drill, baby, drill? There's all that oil in the North Sea. We need more money. Why don't we start doing that? The UK has so many opportunities, but it is limiting itself with this old way of thinking. I think they need to think of new ideas.
Is it time to start drilling, Benjamin, do you think? We're back on our net zero commitments.
If we did drill, we'd still be paying the same price because oil prices are set internationally, not based on what you produce domestically. So it wouldn't have any big impact on the UK economy. But I did learn an incredible fact. Norway, which is an oil-rich, North Sea oil-rich country, its National Sovereign Wealth Fund is worth more than £300,000 per Norwegian citizen. So maybe there is an argument that that could make us rich.
Let's move on to another story, gentlemen. Now, Whoopi Goldberg in the UK, we think of her as a kind of actress primarily, but here in America, she's a news commentator. She's a rent-a-gob on a show called The View, and she had to rip up a note handed to her by the channel ABC, which forced her to issue a legal correction live. Have a look.
Listening to what the hell? What?
I love when Sonny passes notes.
We don't know if Trump used an auto pen to part. It was a joke.
Yeah. We don't know if Trump used an auto pen to part.
Come on.
But we do know that he didn't know who that crypto guy was.
Well, I'm sorry. You know,
So that was after Whoopi Goldberg claimed that Trump was using an auto pen. And Thomas, she literally took the piece of paper, she said, I'm not going to, and she said it's a joke, and then she ripped it up. Benjamin Butterworth, if I did that on GB News, I'd be sacked straight away. If you're told to issue an apology to get something right legally, you just do it, don't you? She's frustrated that Trump is doing so well.
I think as a journalist, you always have to do the legal bit correctly. That's the one bit that's not up for debate. Look, if I were Whoopi, I'd be careful because the lawsuits there, I think Donald Trump is already suing, the Wall Street Journal and various other places for huge amounts of money. So I'd probably be careful.
Is that typical behaviour, Thomas, from Whoopi Goldberg on that show? She hates Donald Trump so much, doesn't she?
She's crazy. And I think you can see the panic that the producers have that they might get sued. I think the BBC might be worrying a little bit tonight because there's a very high chance that they're going to be getting sued by President Trump very soon. And he doesn't deal in millions. This is going to be billions. So I think some of the execs are probably a little bit worried over there.
This was, of course, Eric, because Whoopi Goldberg said Trump's using an auto pen. We need to explain to our viewers because we get lots of complaints that we talk about this auto pen without explaining what it is. So would you just explain to our viewers, Eric, what it is and who was using it?
President Trump has attempted to excoriate former President Joe Biden for saying that he was using an auto pen, basically that he was not actually signing the pardons and the orders coming from the White House, that it was an actual machine that was doing it, and that he was senile and had no idea what he was doing. However, in a 60 Minutes interview, President Trump himself actually admitted that he pardoned a man that he knew nothing about or even knew why the person was convicted, let alone why he actually issued the pardon of this person, which suggests that perhaps this pardon came from an auto pen because Donald Trump himself did not know what was going on or why this was issued.
Now that's a different, we're looking at pictures on the screen here. This is the renovated Rose Garden at the White House, and it's got this walkway down the side with all of the presidents who've lived in the house. It's a new installation by the president, and you can see he's got himself there as the 45th president, and then the existing picture of him as the 47th, and in the middle, instead of a picture of Joe Biden, every other frame down that wall are presidents that you would know and you would have heard of, Lincoln, Roosevelt, etc. And in place of Joe Biden, he's got a picture of the auto pen and his signature, which suggests that this is an issue, Thomas, that he's not going to let go. And actually, there is a serious legal implication around this, because if there were people pardoned by Biden and he had no idea he was doing it, or somebody else made that decision for him, that is very serious, isn't it?
Yeah, and you know, this is not just the president making this up. A Senate inquiry has found that only one pardon that was, he issued loads of pardons on his last day. Only one of them was signed by him, and that was the one for his son. The rest of them for Fauci, for all these people, it was the identical signature. Practically impossible for someone to do an identical signature every time. So they were all the auto pens. So the president is now looking, I think it will go to the Supreme Court to see whether these pardons are actually valid. And it was not just about pardons, it was about these preemptive pardons. He pardoned Fauci for we don't know what for. What crimes did Fauci commit that he should be pardoned for? We'll never know. But I think that the fact that he was just using this auto pen on the last day in office is quite outrageous, really.
I could probably help them with the kind of things Fauci was doing that he should have gone to prison for. But Benjamin, I just find it amazing, don't you, that there even is such a thing as an auto pen. We don't have this in British politics, do we? We probably use like an old-fashioned like stamp and ink or something, or maybe like somebody gets out their quill and just interprets. I mean, it's just extraordinary that even exists in politics.
Well, of course, we have the monarch has to sign off when laws are completed. And so, you know, poor old Queen Elizabeth II will have still been sat there signing these from her daily red box at 95, 96 years old in her final days. So, you know, I suspect if Joe Biden did this, he would have been far from the only US president. But I would say a bit of British stoicism. If a 90-odd-year-old monarch can keep signing her documents, then I reckon the sprightly US presidents should do the same.
Yeah, quite. Right, let's move on to another story now. Elon Musk has been talking to podcast megastar Joe Rogan, and Joe reeled off some shocking stats about Britain's so-called war on free speech during his podcast conversation. Here you go.
Like England, you know,
where they lock people up for memes and stuff. Literally. Yeah.
12,000 people this year.
12,000?
12,000. 12,000 arrests for social media posts.
I mean, yeah, some of these things you read about it, and it's like literally, it's someone had a meme on their phone that they didn't even send to anyone.
Right.
And they're like in prison for that.
See, I find it quite heartening to see two very high-profile Americans worrying on our behalf. And Musk and Rogan warned that Europe's slide into speech policing is accelerating, they said, even faster than Russia or China. Are they right, Benjamin?
No, not at all. This is such claptrap. I mean, first of all, no one is getting arrested in the UK for a meme that they never sent. They're not getting arrested for memes they sent. But if you tweet that you should go and set fire to a hotel that has asylum seekers in it, then I don't think the pertinent part of that is that it was on Twitter. It's that you made a comment that was dangerous and that was inflammatory. And to compare it to Russia or China, well, there's a reason you don't get that many arrests for comments in Russia and China, because people are terrified to say these things in the first place. You know, in Russia, it's a criminal offence to say that you support gay pride, for goodness sake. I think that's a lot worse than in Britain or America.
But we have a problem with people being arrested and had a knock on the door for things that they might have said on social media. And I come back to this idea, it's a bit like the conversation we had about January the 6th. You are the architect of your own behaviour, and you can't blame somebody else for encouraging you or forcing you to go and burn down a migrant hotel or whatever it is that they encourage you to do, Eric. Surely we have to live in a world where you are responsible for your own actions, and words are not violence, they are just words.
Well, that's true. And in the United States, we certainly do try to live by that. But I think if we're going to look at speech, speech does have the power and the ability to incite. And I do believe in some instances it does need to be needs to be policed.
Thomas, have we gone too far in the UK, despite what Benjamin thinks?
Yeah, well, it's always despite what Benjamin thinks, but you know, free speech has to be free speech. You have to be able to say whatever you want to say, and I think the UK has lost its way on that. I think I'm so proud to be living in the US, where I can freely tweet whatever I want. I'm protected by the First Amendment. And I think, you know, this also comes back to, we've all seen the videos of the, you know, there are memes now of the two police officers knocking on the door for, you know, you've tweeted this or you've said that. Meanwhile, they couldn't go out and find the guy that was, you know, stabbing people in a barber shop, but they can go to your house because you've tweeted something. I think it's embarrassing on the world stage that the UK has been reduced to this, and I think we have to figure that out.
Yeah, well, I like to see, even if they may not necessarily be perfectly factually accurate there, Elon Musk and Joe Rogan, I would concede there aren't that many people locked up in prison for social media tweets, but we certainly haven't got it right. Benjamin, thank you so much for joining me, and also Eric Ham, Thomas Corbett-Dillon, thank you. Gentlemen, we will watch with bated breath to see what Donald Trump does about the BBC stitching him up in Panorama. I'll be back with more of that tomorrow night, midnight. See you then.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's another dull and damp day for many of us, wet in places as well, particularly western parts of the country, but with moisture-laden southwesterly winds, it's also going to be a mild one. Now, it won't be raining everywhere through the day. Parts of northern Scotland and Northern Ireland will see some brighter spells in between showers, the showers most frequent in the far northwest. But across much of England and Wales, it's very rainy, with the wettest weather increasingly towards South Wales and